So welcome back, everyone. And we have James Braha. We are lucky enough to have him yet again on the show. And we are going to be discussing the charts of a few important political figures right now in current times. And so, James, do you have anything to add to that?
No, whenever you're ready.
All right. Awesome.
Well, so, I will say this. I don't know much about these people.
Yeah.
But the charts are fascinating.
Absolutely. And I mean, I feel that as astrologers, it just gives us so much more insight into how these people may be on a personal level and how their mind works. And it just, it gives such an amazing perspective. So it'll be a lot of fun. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. So here we are. And so and so you can go ahead and take it away, James.
Okay. So this is my choice that we look at the Klobuchar horoscope. I know so little about this woman, and as the debates were going on, and she was up there, I said, "Gosh, who is this woman?" I know nothing about her. Mm-hmm. And I have a friend who said, "Oh my God, she's wonderful. She's wonderful." So all right. So I looked at the data, I looked at the horoscope, and I just was gobsmacked. This is a horoscope that is similar to Obama in the sense of the fifth house being very prominent. There's two things that are similar with hers and Obama's. One is that he has the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, and she also has the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And the other thing is the fifth house planets. They're both very similar in that way. The Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, or opposition, by the way, because Cortez also has a Jupiter opposite Saturn. When people have Jupiter conjunct Saturn or Jupiter opposite Saturn, they are capable of breaking the boundaries. There's a very, very high chance that Biden will choose her as his running mate. And Biden is getting elected on the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in an Earth sign. In almost every case, when a president has been elected on the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in an Earth sign, they die in office. George W. Bush did not die in office, and he was elected on when Jupiter and Saturn were conjunct on an Earth sign. But he has a Jupiter-Moon conjunction, so he's very lucky, very lucky. I don't know. Anyway, he didn't, but all the others did. And Ronald Reagan was elected when Jupiter-Saturn were conjunct, but in an air sign. Mm-hmm. So air is the mind. Oh, by the way, I'm speaking from the tropical zodiac in terms of the Jupiter-Saturn. I don't know where they were in the sidereal, but
okay.
In Reagan's case, he lost his mind while he was still in office. He was losing his mind. But anyway, look, these two guys that are running for office, they're old enough to die in office. But my belief is that Biden will die in office having chosen a woman president, now a woman vice president. So she has the Jupiter-Saturn. When you have Jupiter-Saturn conjunction or opposition, you're able to break boundaries because Jupiter is your dreams and visions, and Saturn is conservative and traditional. And those people, I have the opposition within minutes. Those people, they immediately can see whether something is possible or not. They have a dream or a vision, and right away Saturn comes in and says, is this realistic or not? So these people break boundaries. Obama did. She could be the first woman president. And you look at her fifth house. This is what Obama had, a very, very powerful fifth house. The fifth house is kingship. Of course, the 10th house is leadership. Of course, most U.S. presidents have extremely strong Mars. I mean, if you go through the list of presidents in the last 100 years, Mars is always conjunct Mercury, conjunct Venus, conjunct Jupiter, something where Mars is very prominent. They're very warlike. Mm-hmm. in her case, she does not have the real strong Mars, but she does have the fifth house planets, which are kingship. And the fifth house is Purva Punya, past life credit. It gives, the fifth house is the mind, creativity, past life credit. But when you have very prominent fifth house, you have a sense of destiny. It would not surprise me if she grew up wanting to be president, thinking that she would be president. Wouldn't surprise me. The fifth house is phenomenal because you've got the exalted moon with Venus in Venus's own sign, along with the sun and Mercury. So the sun is kind of the strongest planet in that fifth house, because even though Venus is in its own sign and moon's exalted, the sun is picking up the vibrations of the benefics. The benefics actually get hurt by being near the sun, but the sun, which is leadership and kingship and politics and authority, is in the house of politics, kingship, surrounded by these three benefics. It doesn't get any better. Mm-hmm. It doesn't get any better, with the fifth house ruler being in its own sign, with the moon being there. Now, this also is giving her brilliance. It's giving her extreme intelligence. It's giving her brilliance, but it's also giving her the sense that she's the leader. I mean, I was watching these debates. I said, who is this woman? I don't know this woman. Did she pay her dues? Has she paid her dues? I don't know who she is. But actually, I think I heard that she's passed a lot of legislature as a senator or something. So also, you look at the 10th house ruler is Venus. It is in its own sign, conjunct a great benefic moon, an exalted moon. So the 10th house is very, very strong. Mars aspects the 10th house, which is helpful because presidents have to have these real strong Marses. It's not a strong Mars, but Mars comes into the career, so she can be assertive. But look at this first house, okay? The first house ruler, Saturn, yes, it's in the 12th house, which is a spiritual house, a bad house, behind the scenes, etc. But that Saturn is aspected by Rahu, very tight, within 4 degrees, and by Jupiter in Jupiter's own sign. Most astrologers are still going by the superstitious old time, Rahu and Ketu are the most evil, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. But Rahu is cravings and desires for worldly power. Mm-hmm. And when Rahu aspects the first house, that person has charisma and power. In this case, it's aspecting the ascendant ruler. So the ascendant ruler looks really spiritual. It's in the 12th house enlightenment. It's next to Jupiter. It looks like she's a very spiritual person, but in fact, that Rahu aspecting that ascendant ruler within 4 degrees is giving worldly power. Mm. So this is a horoscope to look at. Somebody told me that the New York Times, I think he told me that the New York Times was recommending that he choose Klobuchar or Elizabeth Warren. I have no idea who he'll choose, but it really wouldn't surprise me. This is a person that is destined to be really powerful figure.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
The Dasha Bhukti going on is the Saturn Dasha, which is strong because of the aspects, and Venus Bhukti. Venus is March 2019 to May 2022. Venus is the 10th house ruler. It's in the 5th house, past life credit, with the moon. So this is going to be interesting to watch. I'm really fascinated to see. And the thing is, Obama had the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Capricorn. Mm-hmm. In Capricorn. It's taken me it took me decades to realize Jupiter in Capricorn is not as bad as most fallen planets.
Yeah. Saturn
in Libra is not as good as most exalted planets. But Jupiter in Capricorn people oftentimes are arrogant. And They think that they know more than other people. Now, the Republicans, the thing that they complained about the most about that guy, they said, this guy thinks he knows that. He thinks he's the smartest person in the room. Now, he may be the smartest person in the room. He may not. The fact that he gives off the vibration that he knows better than everybody, that's the Jupiter in Capricorn. On top of that, he's a very well-respected man. He's miles above our current president in terms of being presidential and decent, et cetera, et cetera. But he made one of the worst choices. I was stunned when this man who Obama campaigned with Paul Volcker at his back. Who was Paul Volcker? Paul Volcker was the Federal Reserve chief when inflation got to be just, the United States was having just huge inflation. We were in deep, deep, deep trouble. And Paul Volcker came along and he raised interest rates to 20%. He was going to break inflation no matter what. He broke it. Wow. And because he did the right thing, he broke it. And then we had 20 years of solid economics. Well, Obama campaigned with Paul Volcker. Then when he got into office, he felt that he knew best. And what he did was he put the people that caused the economic crisis, the ones that caused it, put them in charge. And what did they do? They papered over the crash, right? What they should have done was to let the banks fail. They should have let our system crash. It would have been enormously painful for 2 or 3 years. 2 or 3 years. And then the system would have started up again and we could have had a healthy economy. Instead, he put these people that caused the problem in charge. And so now we have the system now with this pandemic, with them printing another $6 trillion, we're going to go up to $10 trillion debt. We are now in a deep, deep crisis. Most people don't know what we're headed for, but it is not good. And this was a result of his arrogance, as soon as he got into office, and people said to Paul Volcker, what's he doing? What is he doing? He said, he's not listening to me, because he had that Jupiter in Capricorn.
Interesting.
She does not. She's got Jupiter. He had Jupiter Saturn, so he could break boundaries. She's got Jupiter Saturn, but not in Capricorn. She won't have that problem. Mm-hmm. She won't have that problem.
So I'm interested though, because earlier you mentioned that you were suggesting that it's possible the next elected president, it's possible that they pass in office just by the trend that you've seen. Utilizing the Jupiter and Saturn conjunction in an air sign, earth sign, utilizing the tropical zodiac. And so are you kind of suggesting that it's possible that she becomes the first woman president?
No, I'm not suggesting it. I'm saying if whoever is in office is almost certainly going to die in office.
Okay.
So yes, my thought is that this would be our next president. She's going to break the boundaries the way Obama did with Jupiter, Saturn. That's if he chooses her. But I think I think there's a very, very, very strong chance he'll choose her based on her horoscope, because she's got the most presidential chart that I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, looking at her moon chart as well, it's just super powerful, super strong. I know in your book with the K2 in the 10th, that's an excellent placement for having power in your career, though it does create opposition. But if you're getting into politics, it's like, of course, you're going to have the opposition in your career. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez also has K2 in the 10th. And then she has...
What opposition are you talking about?
Oh, no, I'm the moon chart of Amy. She has K2 in the 10th house.
Oh, right.
And AOC has that as well. And I was just making these connections that even from her moon chart, it's a very powerful chart for politics. Yeah.
Oh, this is an enormously strong horoscope. I'm telling you, this is a chart. I know nothing about this woman, but this woman's got to be brilliant. She's got to be extremely intelligent, and she's got leadership ability that is to die for.
What else and I'm curious to hear what you say, but I'd imagine she'd be extremely charming also with her moon and Venus so close together, exalted, like her moon exalted in Taurus. I'm sure that she's very good with communicating and utilizing charm as well.
Yeah. The thing is that the power, the sun really bowls me over, because all the charm that you're talking about that's there is lending itself to the sun. The sun is hemmed in by these three benefics. But yeah, the moon Venus aspect. If I could choose my own horoscope, the two aspects I think of first is moon Jupiter or moon Venus. Those are the two that I would just give anything to have. They smooth your life. They're wonderful aspects. Awesome. Wonderful.
Yeah.
But she's got to be very, very intelligent. That Mercury in the fifth house, very few people have objective intellects. If Mercury's in the 11th aspecting the fifth, or Mercury in the fifth, then the person is objective minded. Very few people are objective minded. They're biased as heck.
Yeah.
But so I like that in her as well. And the sun in the fifth house makes her practical minded. If she just had moon Venus Mercury, she'd be more like an artist, and the mind would be completely optimistic and happy and jovial. But the practicality of that sun in the fifth house is just enormous, I think.
So what would you say about having Neptune in the 10th? Would you say that what that would signify for her? I feel like
I don't normally use those so much in the Hindu charts.
Okay.
I use them more in the Western, but it is there.
Okay.
And so I haven't seen the Western chart, but I'll assume it's there. Neptune, that Neptune could either be connected to the career or the father.
Oh.
So it wouldn't surprise me if it's more about her father. I don't know. Like I say, I know nothing about her. But the father could have been absent. The father could have been alcoholic. The father could have been weird. Mm-hmm. As a planet in the 10th house for career, I would say it's not good. Mm. The best that it could do, Neptune is illusion, deception, weird and strange. The best that Neptune in the 10th house can do is give a great idealism. To have great ideals and be idealistic in the career. And it's wonderful for a spiritual metaphysical career. I don't really see it helping the political career. I don't see it helping that at all.
Okay. And I'm interested, though, you mentioning, and I mean, of course, neither of us know anything about her personal life. This is all like speculation.
Right.
So, of course, some astrologers use the 9th house for the father, some use the 10th. But when you mentioned the father, I started looking at the 9th house, and the 9th house ruler, Mercury, does go into the 5th. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, but I've seen this it can show this heavy influence from the father, and her path in life, her dharma, is largely influenced either from the father or some type of paternal lineage. Have you seen that to be true, or seen that in readings that you've done?
That's not exactly how I look at it in terms of whether the father affects her. I look at the 9th house and the 10th house.
Okay.
I look at the 9th house and the 10th house both to see the father. And then I have to look at Jupiter and the sun being a karaka of the father. And then if you're using the 9th house as father, you have to look at Jupiter. My guess here is that there was problems with the father.
Okay.
Because Jupiter is not well. Jupiter being aspected by Saturn and Rahu is not so good. And then having Neptune in the 10th, my guess is that there were problems with the father, or father died early, or father wasn't, something like that.
Okay.
But there's something enormously special about the father because of the sun. So I would imagine that maybe there was some loss of the father or something like that, but I would also guess that her sense of power came from her father, because the sun is so strong. You don't usually get a son that's this massively powerful without having the father be not only strong, but somehow conferring confidence, giving her the confidence that she would need.
Okay.
But when I started with astrology, it was very bizarre because I was a Western astrologer, and the 10th house is clearly the father. Then I get to India, and my first teacher tells me that the 9th house is the father. But then I go back to India, and my next mentor tells me he's from the north, and he tells me that the 10th house is the father. And so I find it very, very, very difficult unless the sun is a complete wreck or something like that. It's very, very hard predicting the father. Some texts will say that one house represents the father's actual karma and the other your relationship with the father. It's very complicated.
Yeah.
It's not like the mother. With the mother, you use 4th house, moon, and Mercury. And most people forget Mercury. And if you forget Mercury, you will not analyze the mother correctly. And it took me a long time to wonder, why the heck would Mercury relate to the mother? Because like you'd see a chart where the 4th house is good, the moon is good, and the Mercury's a wreck, and the mother's got big problems.
Yep.
Or Mercury is exalted and fantastic, and then the 4th house is not so good, and the mother's good. And what I eventually speculate is that your Mercury is the nervous system, and your nervous system is developed in your mother's womb. So I suspect that if your nervous system is weak, it's because the mother was weak, or vice versa. If the nervous system's strong, it's because your mother was strong. Anyway, you have to use both for that.
Yeah.
But the father, I find it more difficult to know for sure.
Okay. Yeah, you were actually the first person to introduce the Mercury concept to me. And I, of course, have had readings before, and people, of course, mentioned my mother, but I felt like you had the most accurate read of my mother. And I feel like that if you pay attention to my Mercury placement, you would get that. And so that had me convinced, because in my reading with you, you explained that. And I was like, wow, that's so fascinating.
I mean, they're in my books now, but it's not like anybody really explained it that much. But I remember just when I was getting the basics from my teacher, Santanam, and I remember he said, the karakas of the 4th house are moon and Mercury. And I said, Mercury is a karaka of the 4th house. And that's where that came from. But you must use it.
Okay.
But the father, there's too much. There's the 9th, the 10th, the sun, the Jupiter.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah. So, but this is going to be very interesting to see, because, like with Obama, it's his 5th house that makes him president more than the other stuff. His brilliance, his intelligence. I don't remember his Mars. I don't remember his chart exactly, but I don't remember him having an extraordinary Mars, which most presidents do.
I think his Mars is in the 8th house with Rahu.
That's it. Mars Rahu is strong, but the 8th house is not. But if you look at most presidents, they have Mars with Mercury or Venus or moon, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
U.S. presidents. Yeah.
So, is there anything else that you'd like to say about her chart, or do you want to move on to AOC or Joe Biden?
Let's move. Yeah, let's move on. One thing I would say is that her Mars in the 3rd house is a good placement for being able to take care of errands and get things done. She's known to be someone who's gotten a lot done as a senator. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's fascinating though. Would you want to look at Joe Biden's next, or?
Sure, that's fine.
Because they're it's just interesting to look at their chart side by side and get a feel for how they'll get along as well. Just any similarities in the charts.
His his chart is really fascinating because the Rahu in the 10th house is very strong. And the 10th house ruler, Sun, in the first, aspected by Jupiter within 2 degrees and Venus within 3 degrees. And the fact that he wants to choose a woman vice president, I think, has a lot to do with that Sun Venus. But he is in the Rahu Bhukti right now.
He is in the Rahu,
which I think is strong. It's not the best being in Leo, but Rahu is it's a strong place. Rahu in the 10th is definitely a very, very strong placement. And the Jupiter, he's in Jupiter Dasha. Jupiter is in the 9th house. It's exalted, but it's also aspected by Saturn. Saturn aspecting that Jupiter is not a real helpful thing. But this is a very strong chart. It's also fascinating that, his wife died in a car accident with his children.
Oh my God!
Oh, you didn't know that?
No. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. I think his wife and a few children died in a car accident. It was horrible. But you look at this. Saturn is in the 7th house.
Yeah.
Mars aspects the 7th house, and it's a very, very bad aspect because it's aspecting Taurus, which is opposite Mars's own sign. And Venus is burnt. Even though Venus has got an aspect from Jupiter, Venus, the planet of love, is burned by being with the sun. Plus, planets don't do well in Scorpio. The only planets I find that do well in Scorpio are the Sun and Mars. Other planets simply have troubles when they're in Scorpio. It's like the 8th house. It's like the house of death or the sign of death. It's just a very difficult one. But you could see, and then on top of that, he has Mars 7 houses away from the moon.
Yeah.
So he's got a lot of, indications. You would know that there would have to be some significant, suffering on account of a spouse.
And from his moon chart, his 7th house ruler does move into the 8th, and it's that burnt Venus in the sign of Scorpio. So it's just it's reaffirming what you're saying.
Yeah.
Oh,
the Sun Venus is what makes him, he's always trying to be a nice guy. Yeah. That's the Sun Venus. But he's got a Mars there too, because Mars is aspecting the moon. And his Mars, which is strong in presidential horoscopes, his Mars is aspected by Moon and Mercury, so it has some strength for sure. But it's not. I don't look at this chart and say, oh my gosh, this is definitely a politician and things like that. But he has enough, and Jupiter aspects the 5th house, and it's aspecting its own sign, Pisces. So that is good. He's got a lot of retrogrades. Jupiter and Saturn are both retrograde. So it's a little bit less ambitious or less intense.
Yeah. And the 1st house ruler being in the 12th as well, I think that can be really good for being idealistic at times or being creative and having like out of the box ideas. But it can also be one of these placements where you can get accused of things. And I feel like that kind of happens to him, like these kind of allegations come up.
Yeah. If that Mars had not been aspected by Mercury and Moon, it would be weak. It would be a very weak. It would really harm the ascendant. The ascendant is strong with the Sun, Venus, and Jupiter aspecting Saturn too. But but Mars is aspected by the moon, which is a wonderful aspect because this is a full moon. This is 2.5 days before the full moon, and the moon is ruling the ninth house. The moon is ruling the ninth house, and it's a full moon. So that full moon, that ninth house ruler moon aspecting that Mars is part of what makes him famous.
Okay.
Part of what makes him famous. Mars having those aspects. Otherwise, they would be pretty weak.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Saturn, I'm updating my first book, Ancient Hindu Astrology, and I keep coming across this term Dikbala. There's something called Shadbala.
Mm-hmm.
Shadbala is a system where it's a mathematical system that you do, that if you did it by hand before computers, it would take you 2 or 3 days to calculate Shadbala. And Shadbala has Dikbala and some other balas. And anyway, when a planet gets Dikbala, it becomes strong. So his Saturn in the 7th has Dikbala, okay? And that makes Saturn strong.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it has a bigger effect on the marriage house so much. It means that Saturn, which is discipline and responsibility and things like that, they become quite strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And something that I mentioned, and I'm sure, I'm interested to hear what you'll say, is just because a planet is strong also doesn't mean it's always going to give good results. And so,
no, it doesn't mean good results. It just means powerful.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's just like that powerful effect of his experience in marriage. And of course, that didn't come solely from the Saturn, but it probably amplified things.
I was stunned when it took me a long time to understand what does Dikbala mean, because, if I had to choose where I did not want Saturn to be in a horoscope, it would be the 1st and the 7th. And after that, it would be the 4th.
Uh-huh.
Well, those are the most difficult.
Yeah.
Saturn in the 1st harms the confidence. Saturn in the 4th makes a heavy heart. Mm. Saturn in the 7th is really hard on marriage. Those are the 3 most difficult Saturn placements. How could that be the most powerful placement for Saturn?
Mm-hmm.
But what it means is, doesn't make it good. It just means Saturn, discipline, responsibility, organization, administration, they become powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So do you want to go ahead and move on to AOC?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. My personal favorite chart.
Well, maybe you know something about her. I don't know anything about her. But it's interesting because Mars here is very, very prominent. And Mars has its great year in the 28th year. Very few astrologers use the great years of the planets. The reason that I wound up using the great years of the planets, so the great years of the planets are when the planet comes of age, when it matures. So Jupiter comes of age in the 16th year. So if you have a Sag or Pisces ascendant, your 16th year is likely to be very important. That's when you know who you are. The sun is the 22nd year. The moon is sun is 22nd year, between 21 and 22. Moon is 24th year, between 23 and 24.
Wow.
And then Venus is the 25th year. Mars is the 28th, between 27 and 28.
Wow.
And then Mercury's the 32nd and Saturn's the 36th. Rahu's the 42nd year, Ketu's the 48th year. So her 28th year is when she could come to know who she is and what she's capable of. And Mars is very powerful because it's aspected by moon, full moon, the sun, and exalted Mercury. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that Mars is a strong Mars. So the 28th year for her would have been around 2017 to 2018. So she's getting more and more prominent. So this horoscope is it's also political with the full moon in the 5th house. This is a very, very, very full moon in the 5th house, and that's the house of the mind. People with people with the moon in the fifth house, they learn things faster than anybody.
Yeah.
And her moon is aspected by Mercury within minutes. They're within the same degree. So this is somebody who's going to be talking and communicating a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Now that aspect, Mercury's aspect is a mixed aspect because Mercury's aspecting moon in Pisces. That's Mercury's fallen placement. So that's going to hurt the moon in some way, shape, or form. Might have hurt the mother or something like that. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Might have hurt children. It's hard to know. I don't know anything about her life. But the brilliance of the full moon in the fifth house, and even the aspect on Mercury of Mercury, even though Mercury's going to cause some harm aspecting its fallen sign, it's still Mercury. So that moon Mercury is going to be someone who's talking, and very intelligent. And the moon is in the house of the mind, so she's always thinking. This is a highly thinking person. Mm-hmm. Really, her intellect is very, very intense. Mm-hmm. The fact that the ascendant ruler is next to the sun is, 5 degrees. That's the closest aspect to the ascendant ruler. The ascendant ruler is with Mercury, with moon, but it's within 5 degrees of the sun. Mm-hmm. So the sun is going to be the strongest feature for her personality in terms of power, leadership, being bossy, being assertive, like that. And then she's got Venus in the ascendant, which is very helpful. Even though it's in Scorpio, even though it rules the 12th house, it's still Venus.
Yeah.
So that is going to give her presence and good looks and people, noticing her and things like that. Her Jupiter is very afflicted. Now she's got the Jupiter-Saturn opposition within minutes, within 2 degrees. So she also can break boundaries. The Jupiter-Saturn opposition means you're going back and forth between optimism and pessimism, expansion and contraction. You live with this push. You live with this awful, I know because I have it within minutes. And something is either fantastic or terrible. Yeah. And you're always trying to find the balance. It's a difficult aspect, but you can break boundaries with that.
Yeah.
But the Jupiter is in a good deal of trouble because it's in Gemini.
Yeah.
And it's aspected by Saturn that tightly. And it's in the 8th house. Mm. So allergies, liver, gallbladder, spleen, allergies are going to be troublesome. She must have some trouble with children, one way or the other, because Jupiter rules children and Jupiter rules her house of children.
Yeah. So
she is definitely going to have some troubles in that area. But she may also have some wonderful children from the full moon in the 5th as well.
Yeah.
Now her Ketu in the 10th house, that's where she has this idealism. She wants to do things that have never been done before, that people are going to go crazy because it's too far out. That's the Ketu.
So would you say that for every Ketu in the 10th, or why specifically for her?
Any Ketu in the 10th house is going to be somewhat good and somewhat bad.
Okay.
Ketu is like Neptune. It's illusion, deception, weird and strange.
Yeah.
So what you get with clients, if they have Ketu in the 10th house, you either get somebody who is using Ketu, and I'm just talking Ketu, not with aspected by other planets, just take Ketu.
Okay.
So Ketu for many people will be confusing. Weird, strange, confusing, I don't know what to do. It'll be that. Or it'll be highly idealistic. Or it will be film photography, oil, gas, magic. Or spiritual, metaphysical.
Okay.
In other words, you take the meanings of what Ketu is. Now, Ketu is a malefic in an Upachaya house. Mm-hmm. 3, 6, 10, and 11, those houses can use malefic energy. Mm-hmm. Okay? So that's helpful for the career. But Ketu will cause confusion for people unless they're doing film, in which case you got to check Venus, the third and fifth house, unless they're doing spiritual metaphysical career. Unless they're doing that, the Ketu is going to cause problems.
Okay. And then her 10th house ruler also moves into the 11th. And just like looking at her 11th house, obviously it's like drawing so much attention. If someone were to look at this chart and had never seen a chart before, their eyes are probably going to go to that 11th house. But it looks like she's going to come into contact with really powerful people, but it does, like the opposition is definitely there.
Well, it means that she's concerned with groups.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, her career is connected to large groups of people.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things of politics. The thing about the career is that it's very, very powerful, because it's aspected by a full moon, it's aspected by exalted Mercury, and the career wants to be Marsy.
Yeah.
Which is mechanical or technical or leadership, like a president, like that.
Okay.
Yeah. But as far as, the sun as the 10th ruler being aspected by those planets could be anywhere. It could be anywhere in the chart. It would, the house placement doesn't matter so much, because the planets that are aspecting it are just obliterating anything else.
Okay.
In other words, the career is magnificent because it's aspected by the 9th ruler full moon. It's aspected by exalted Mercury. It's aspected by the ascendant ruler Mars. So it could be anywhere and she'd be having this big career. The fact that it's in the 11th means that she can hang out with powerful friends, like you say, and it means also that she's going to want to work with groups of people. I'm sure that from a very young age, she was very group-oriented and friends-oriented, but it really wouldn't matter. She'd have just as much of a successful career, no matter what house it was in.
Okay.
Because the planets are there's so much strong energy from those planets.
Yeah. And so I guess that what I was like trying to say is that it's with her 6th house ruler, and I should have mentioned that as well. But as you were mentioning earlier, the malefics do well in the Upachaya houses. And so it's making her concerned in groups, and it's giving her those humanitarian efforts, and it's also giving her the ability to overcome that opposition.
What opposition?
The 6th house ruler being in the 11th.
You mean that hurting the sun, you mean?
No, well, she definitely had issues with her father. Her father passed away. And so, it is definitely giving some malefic aspects to the sun. But I was just mentioning, like, when the 6th house ruler moves into the 11th, the 6th house is the house of opposition, enemies, obstacles. It goes into the 11th house. And because it's...
Wait a minute, wait. I don't take the 11th house as being a house of those problems.
The 6th house?
Oh, 6th house, okay.
The 6th house ruler is in the 11th.
Yeah. But you see, it's first of all, Mars is the 6th ruler and the 1st ruler. So it's going to have a more positive element, more so than the 6th, I think.
Yeah, and that's what I was mentioning, though, is it's helping her overcome obstacles.
Right. The other thing is, when you use the word opposition, I started with Western astrology, so when you say opposition, I'm thinking a planet opposite another planet.
Okay.
So that's why I said, what opposition?
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't worry much about that in this case. It would be, I would worry about a planet ruling 6, 8, or 12 if it's very close to another planet, very close. Then I start to get very concerned. It could be Venus, it could be Jupiter, if it rules the 8th or the 12th. If it's 5 or 6 degrees away, I don't worry about it because it's a benefic. But if it's 1, 2, 3 degrees and it's ruling one of those bad houses, I don't care if it's forming a Raja Yoga. I mean, I've seen Venus and Mercury for a Gemini ascendant, and Venus rules the 12th house and the 5th. It's the best planet in the chart. But when it gets really close to that Mercury, some serious damage is done because it rules the 8th or the 12th. But my experience is that I only worry about it when it's 2-3 degrees. That's when I get very concerned about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I had another question about the K2, because she is going to have the K2 transiting over her first house here in a couple of months in September. And so I was wondering if the same qualities that you were mentioning K2 brings into the chart, if it's similar with transit from what you've seen. And so how you feel that this may impact her, especially because she's running her K2 Dasha.
Yeah, I'm not, I have not had success using Rahu and Ketu transits. The most that I have seen, and I could be wrong, you have to experiment, but my experience with Rahu and Ketu transits is that they're noticeable when there's another malefic. Like if it's Saturn and Ketu or Saturn and Rahu, that's when I worry about it. When it's just Rahu or Ketu, I just don't notice enough results.
Okay.
I don't. Now, what I would expect would be some spiritual, metaphysical, or maybe some health or something like that. But I'm not the one to answer that question because I just haven't noticed enough. Some people, I know that some people, love those transits. I'm just not one of them. I haven't seen them.
With the configurations, though, you're completely right. Like with K2 and Saturn, or K2 and Jupiter, like all of that definitely has an effect. But that's why I was asking you. I was curious because they tend to give such mixed, interesting results. So I just thought I'd ask you.
Well, natally, any planet conjunct Ketu gets really wiped out, except Saturn or Mars. Sometimes Saturn with Ketu destroys Saturn, but many times it doesn't. Ketu with Mars, very oddly, those people fight, which is very, very odd to me because I would expect Mars to be swallowed up and destroyed, but many times it doesn't do what I expect it to do. Those are the two planets next to Ketu, which I consider Ketu way worse than Rahu. Way worse than Rahu, in my experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And so would you say that the transit is way worse, or just in the chart the impact?
The transits, like I say, I don't notice the transits.
Okay.
One of the things of the way that I learn, I'm so experience oriented. I don't care what anybody says. I got to see it work. When Rahu and Ketu transit one of my houses, I just don't see anything significant. I just don't see it. That's why I don't use them.
Okay.
And I haven't seen them in the charts of my family or other people. But when there's two of them, if it's two malefics or something like that, then I think I start to notice it.
Okay.
The same thing happened when I learned astrology. I can't remember anymore. I don't think that Santanam he was my first teacher and he was a scholar, and I don't think he used the Rahu and Ketu aspects. I don't think he used them. He gave them lip service. He said, well, they say it might aspect the 5th and the 9th. And when I was looking at charts for the first years, I couldn't make out whether they were causing anything to happen. It was as the years went by, when I saw that a malefic aspected a house along with Rahu or Ketu aspecting that house, it was crystal clear that Rahu and Ketu were adding something in there. That's when I realized these aspects work.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with transits, I just haven't seen a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
It's funny with astrology. There is so much, and you can't do it all. You can't do it all. I'll tell you, the moon chart, the Chandra Lagna, I mainly use it for planets 7 houses away from the moon.
Okay.
I have not, when I look at horoscopes and I look at mine, I look at other people's, I can't make it work consistently enough, solidly enough. It doesn't mean, every astrologer finds what works for them.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't find the moon chart to be that significant. I have a theory that in the old days, like one of the top 10 features of what works in a horoscope is a planet 7 houses from the moon.
Mm.
You got Venus 7 houses away from the moon, your partner's going to be an artist or romantic. I don't care how wide the aspect is. If they're 7 houses away, it's going to happen. Mars or Saturn 7 houses from the moon, there's going to be troubles. I suspect that when they saw that, they said, let's use all the houses, because I do not find, in my experience, I don't find the moon chart to like to overcome the natal chart or to come even near it. I just don't see it.
Okay.
But I would take a planet 7 houses from the moon and give that as much influence, maybe more, as what's going on in the natal 7th house. That's how strong it is for me.
So because AOC has so many planets across from the moon.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, well,
the Mars and the sun 7 houses away from the moon, that's not good for marriage. No way, shape, or form. Now, the Mercury is the strongest aspect,
mm-hmm.
and it's exalted. First of all, Mercury is dual. As soon as I see Mercury being the most prominent 7 houses from the moon, there's an extreme likelihood that she will have 2 major loves in her life.
Interesting.
But aside from that, the Mercury is the strongest aspect, and it's Mercury exalted. I expect her partner to be brilliant, intellectual, communicative, media, singing. Mercury.
Yeah.
But Mercury is dual. If you got Mercury in the 5th house in Gemini, you got a strong chance of being twins, of having twins. Mm-hmm. The ruler of the 5th house conjunct Mercury, especially in Virgo or Gemini, the dual signs, or Sag or Pisces, the likelihood of having twins increases dramatically.
Interesting.
Yeah. And when you're looking at moon in the 10th house, Mercury in the 10th house, the moon is waxing and waning. Mercury is dual. So if Mercury is in the 10th house, with any affliction, you have a million careers. Because Mercury is changeable, it's fickle, it's changeable, it's movable. Mercury in the 9th house is going to be more travel than some other benefic, because Mercury is so movable. Mm-hmm. Moon in the 9th house is going to be a lot of travel, because the moon, you always have to think of the moon as waxing and waning.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, those are fascinating distinctions that I find work really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, that is so interesting. Yeah, and I love that you're also very mindful about the degree points. With the seminar I took with you in Sedona, that was something that you stressed, was the emphasis on the degree point and trying to get the degrees as close as possible. Or if there's a configuration like this with the Sun, Mars, and Mercury conjunct, looking at the Mercury, which is closest to the degrees of the moon.
Right. And not only that, Mercury is in the 10th degree of Virgo, 5 degrees away. So Mercury in 2 Virgo is great. In 5 Virgo is better. In 8 Virgo, the closer it gets to the 15th degree, the better it is. After it hits 15 degrees, it starts to get weaker. Mm. Likewise, if the sun's in Libra, as it gets closer to the 10th degree, it gets worse and worse and worse. Once it hits the 10th degree and starts moving on, the affliction is less.
Okay.
So you'd much rather have a sun in 15 Libra rather than 5 Libra. You don't want it getting closer. You want it getting further away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And is this really stressed in Western astrology concepts as well?
It's from Western astrology.
Okay.
When I got to India, they did not use the degrees at all. At all. At all. I was the one. Now, when I wrote my first book, I didn't want to, I added some stuff that I knew from Western, but not a lot. But as I went on, I said, wow, you gotta, if you want to be accurate, you've gotta use the degrees. There's no question about it. That's, the same thing. Nobody in Hindu astrology ever said anything about the stationary planet. I knew that from the Western astrology.
Okay.
And if the planet's going to be magnificently strong, stationary in the Western system, it's going to be the same in the Hindu. So there's a certain amount there's a certain amount that I brought to the Hindu system because I knew the Western as well. But I wasn't willing to talk about degrees very much in the first book because I didn't want to mix the systems. But I'm updating that ancient Hindu astrology right now.
Yeah.
And in the celebrity horoscopes, there's about 15. I completely redid them, analyzing them because I know so much more now than I did 35 years ago when I wrote the book.
Yeah.
But the degrees are everything. They are everything.
Can I
and
show?
If you have,
I was just going to ask if I could show your book because I always have it.
Sure.
Ancient Hindu Astrology for the Modern Western Astrologer. And so you're updating it now.
Yeah, that should be out there. Well, it depends on whether I can get it out before the retrograde. Probably not. I don't want to put it out on the retrograde, so it'll probably be in mid-July or or something like that.
Okay.
Because I don't want to put it out on the retrograde. But and also I have to have it proofread, so it'll be about a month. But it's really kind of frustrating for me because I spent a year on it, and I know that most people that already have it, it's going to say updated and revised, but they're not going to understand that I spent a year revising it and updating it.
Yeah.
They'll figure, well, I already have that. But believe me, it took a year of going through all the planets, through all 12 houses, and redoing them with a lot more experience versus what I was told and what I read.
Oh my God. And I mean, I've been studying astrology probably an insignificant amount of time in comparison to you, but I can say every year, the way I perceive a chart transforms, what I know transforms. It's like we're constantly gaining so much knowledge. So I'm super excited to check out your updated version. I'm sure.
Yeah, it's really funny because I when I'm looking at a horoscope now, it is such a different experience. In fact, people used to ask me to do charts of their children, and I'd say we can do both charts in the same session.
Yeah.
I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
I can't do it anymore because my brain starts looking at the horoscope, and my Padya, my second teacher, he said, your mind has to be like a computer mind. My mind takes in so much more information than it did then that we've got to do the kids on separate days. There's just too much that I'm getting.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. You've been so generous with time.
Pleasure.
Is there anything else you want to say about any of these charts?
No, I don't. The thing is, I don't know these people.
Yeah, right. The person I know the most is AOC, but again, I mean, I think that there's just so much we can derive from looking at the charts in and of themselves. It'll be interesting.
The Venus Dasha when she's 34.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's going to be a very interesting Dasha because Venus is in the first house, and that'll bring her a lot more prominence then than she's had now.
Mm-hmm.
Ketu Dasha has been good for her. It's in the 10th house, and that's been good. But Venus, I think, will be better. And in her Sun Dasha from 54 to 60, I think that's also very, very powerful. But
So,
she has to watch out. In her Jupiter, she won't have a Jupiter Dasha. That's good. When she comes to Jupiter Bhuktis, there's trouble.
interesting.
Jupiter's in the 8th house, aspected by Saturn and Rahu. And Jupiter's in Gemini. This is one afflicted Jupiter.
Okay, she's going to be moving into that at the end of the year, which is fascinating because it's at the end of the election season.
Yeah, but it's a bhukti, so it's not,
Right.
not too, yeah. But I mean, she's, oh yeah. So if she has to get reelected and stuff, Jupiter's her most afflicted planet.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I was interested because you were mentioning Amy's chart was like very presidential, and like you definitely stressed that and showed all of the reasons as to why. And then we were talking about Joe Biden, like he's got a really strong chart, strong for career, powerful. And then you were just kind of saying like not as much presidential maybe as the others. So for AOC, you mentioned the moon being in the 5th is powerful. It's one of the indicators that could be for a president, but are there any other indicators? Because I mean, I would personally love for her to run for president, but do you think she'll ever run for president?
The thing about president is that it's so rare. I mean, the United States has 46 presidents or something. I mean,
yeah,
it's just such a rarity. There's so many, and not all their charts look like presidents. Bill Clinton's chart didn't look like a president.
Yeah.
W. Bush, his chart, I didn't think, although he was lucky as hell. He was lucky, and luck is better than anything.
Yeah.
But I think Klobuchar has the best chance. I really do.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah. If Biden gets elected, in my mind, he got elected to put a woman in the Oval Office. That's how I see it. He's not getting elected for himself. He's too old by now.
Wow.
It's like, it's like even getting elected won't have the same meaning at his age.
Yeah.
So to me, if he gets there, it's kind of like for the purpose of putting a woman in the office.
That's amazing insight. And I love what you were mentioning as well. He does have the Venus in the ascendant with the sun.
The sun, it's the sun Venus. The sun is the soul. Mm-hmm. The sun is the soul. And when it's with Venus, that's why, I hate to say it, but they talk about he's, stroking the women's hair and all that crap, That's the sun Venus. He's very comfortable with women.
Yeah. That is so fascinating. I love that.
But Venus, his Venus is afflicted, and he's getting trouble from that woman. His Venus is aspected by Saturn and by the Sun. Mm-hmm. So, and his moon is aspected by Rahu and Mars. So there's trouble with females somehow, but he loves them because of that Sun Venus.
Well, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Amazing insights. I hadn't looked at his chart before today. I was so glad that we decided to look at it.
The one that I wanted, I was dying to get Bernie Sanders' chart, but there's no birth time.
Man, I thought I had his birth time, and then I went back through the information and it said it's not 100% valid.
If you go to AstroDynst,
okay.
That's the best site to go through. It used to be Lois Rodden, I believe. They give AA for the best, then A, then B, then C, then D. That's the one you go to.
What was the name of the site one more time?
You put in so the person's name, like Marlon Brando birth data, Johnny Depp birth data. Okay. And then a bunch of sites come up. You look for the one that says AstroDynst. Okay. AstroDienst, something like that.
Okay.
AstroDynst. That's the one. It was connected to Lois Rodden. She was the number one source for birth data. But when you look there, they've got it A, B, C, D, and it tells you where the data came from.
Wow! Oh my gosh!
Oh yeah. You put in Amy Klobuchar birth data. You Google it. 10 sites come up, 10,
Yeah.
Google, you go for that one.
Okay. I will
Okay.
certainly do that.
Okay.
Thank you. So is there anything else on these charts, or I'll close it off?
Yeah, that's enough.
That's enough? Okay. I mean, I feel like we could talk about them all day, but
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on yet again.
Yeah.
Letting
You're
me know
welcome.
you.
Fun to be here.
Awesome. And so if people want to schedule a reading with you or buy your book,
they can go to jamesbraha.com for my website, or just email me at jamesbraha@gmail.com.
Okay, awesome. And you're super accessible. So
Yes.
yes.
I'm always at the computer.
Writing your book, doing your
writing, editing,
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All
Thanks.
right. Bye.